I was chief speechwriter to President Bill Clinton. I was very involved in running the messaging for what was his 1996 reelection campaign. And in those days, so much of politics revolved around appealing to a fairly narrow sliver of swing voters. And that had its own problems. But what the parties came away from was thinking, oh my goodness, voting really matters. Turnout really matters. You saw the beginning of the Republican push to enact restrictive voting laws to make claims of voter fraud, really starting from this recognition. And you saw also among the Democrats something they had not done before, which was to really focus on turnout, on boosting participation. It's now 25 years later. With the changing political demographics, a lot of that stuff is scrambled. But the voting fights, the polarized and partisan voting fights of the last 2.5 decades started, I always said, at about 4 a.m. that first election night in Florida. That's part of the way this has played out, I would say, in a second sense, in the broader political scene. But there's a third thing for us to focus on, and it's really striking. When the Supreme Court of the United States issued its ruling, it was 5-4, and it effectively gave George W. Bush the victory. The country accepted it. Al Gore, the losing candidate, gave a really stirring statement accepting it. The credibility at that moment of the U.S. Supreme Court was quite high, and that was pretty critical for the court. And it was pretty important, it turns out, in the fact that this wasn't such an earthquake of a ruling. Imagine if something like this happened now. This Supreme Court, over time, has gotten more and more involved in electoral politics in ways that have been increasingly destructive.